Hello everybody and welcome to this talk called Validate, Hype, Release, a strategic approach to reduce your next game's risk to flop. My name is Philomena Schwab and I'm the co-founder of Stray Fawn Studio, a 10-people indie team based in Zurich, Switzerland. We have made 3 games so far. The first one is called Niche, a genetic survival game. Next up, Nimbatus, a space drone constructor, and our most recent project that we're still working on now, The Wandering Village. Our studio was founded 7 years ago by Micha Stettler and me. And like every other indie studio out there, we have a problem, which is maintaining an indie studio is a tough challenge. With roughly 1,000 games launching on Steam every month, it's just too easy to be overlooked. So recently, Micha and me, we sat down after this 7-year mark of our studio and we discussed why are we still around? We have this problem like everybody else. Is there maybe something to our approach on how we make games that is reducing our risk in a way? And we actually came across some factors where we think, yes, this is actually helping us. And in order to explain you how that works, I have to start our story at the very beginning. So the very first game we made as a studio, Niche Genetics Survival Game, was originally my bachelor thesis from university, where I studied, made my bachelor in game design at the ZHDK. I worked on a prototype for the game for about 3 months, and this is what it looked like back then. It was just a very simple prototype. You had this kind of board, you have these animals, and it's a game about population genetics. So all of these animals have like a genetic code, and then you can mate them by placing them next to each other, and they give birth to offspring, which then has a genetic mix of their parents, and so on. So I really wanted to keep working on this game. I really liked this prototype and the idea and the mix of biology and so on, but I was very, very scared if I would be able to pull it off, because just a few weeks before graduating, me and some classmates had released our very first commercial game. It was a mobile game. We even made it together with a publisher who helped us pick a genre, a setting, and so on. And when we launched it on the mobile store, it absolutely horribly flopped, even though we spent like all our vacation over the last 2 years while studying on it. Each of us earned maybe $200 with it, even though, yeah, we worked on it maybe like almost a year of work time went into it. So I was super scared this might happen again now with my bachelor project. So I decided to do an internship at a local game studio that had just released First Strike, maybe you know the game. And the studio is called Blindflug Studio. So I went there and I tried to improve my skills in marketing. Because apparently, even though this game, it had very good reviews and people seemed to enjoy it a lot, just not a lot of people had heard about it and seen it. So even with the help of a publisher, so I thought, well, the thing that is still missing in my skill set is apparently marketing. So I did that for 8 months, and even after that I still felt like I learned a lot, but I don't feel ready yet to make sure that my game that I was working on at the time would really reach a broader audience. So I decided to go back to school and write my master thesis. Again, it was a game design master, but the master thesis was kind of more focused in the marketing direction. It was called Community Building for Indie Game Developers, the Triple E approach to community building, evaluate, establish, and engage. And essentially the goal of the master thesis was to build a fan group around my little genetics game prototype that would help me with the marketing, because obviously I didn't have any money. So it had to be all zero budget marketing, grassroots. And so what I did in this year, or on this 1.5 years of the master, is take the game to lots of events. I traveled all around by train. I also got to go to some bigger events thanks to the support of a local government fund that like allowed me to get some money to fly to different locations. So for example, here I was able to show the game at GDC. And at both the local and also some of the bigger events, I always brought my little newsletter sign-up papers with me. And people that played the game and that seemed to enjoy it, I would always ask them if they would put their name into the list. And you don't know how many hours I've spent like trying to decipher what people have written. yeah, but back then it was really worth it. Every single one of these persons were super important for this first round up, tight-knit first community thing. So then I invited all of these people into our little Facebook group, because back then Facebook was still very relevant, maybe not so much today. But back in the day, this was like one of the most important places for indie game developers to be. So all of these people received an email from me, hey, come on, you can keep testing the game for free. Me and my little team were doing bi-monthly updates that you can just play and give us feedback. We even made the game so that you can just play it as a WebGL build. So you went to the Facebook group and there was the link and you only needed to click and you were already playing the game in the browser, which was super accessible for everybody and helped. And at the same time, I also tried to reach out to similar communities. One of my favorite stories here is that the game is kind of inspired by Warrior Cats, which is a children's book series. And I reached out to the author and asked her if she would maybe give me a shout out, and she did. And then I suddenly had a couple hundred teenage girls in the Facebook group that were all reading, that were fans of the series, right? And that was awesome. It kind of made up for a very interesting mix of people. We also had a lot of dog and cat and horse breeders in there that helped me to keep the genetics accurate. It was a fun time. We also started like a little group of people that were all working on nature games and cross-promoted each other. And then, like as a final test to see if it would actually work to raise funds to get the game somewhere with this group of people that we had now built up, we decided to start a Kickstarter, which luckily was quite successful. It ended up raising $75,000. The original goal was, I think, 15K. And even there, we had a lot of community goals where everybody could participate, share, and this really helped us to generate quite a bit of reach. Also, we had some coverage, not only from traditional game media, but interestingly also from a lot of science sites, even more than from traditional game media sites, just because the whole genetic system of the game is quite accurate, and so it becomes a simulation of population genetics, which a lot of people thought was pretty neat. So we kept working on the game. You can see it got pretty complex with the genes down there. This is what it looked like. And then we launched it into Steam Early Access back in 2016. We kept working on it, in our forums. We opened a Discord once Discord started being a thing. And a lot of people made suggestions. They could vote on their favorite suggestions. We got a bunch of fan art in, which was super motivating for the team. And then after about a year, we decided it's now time to do the full launch of the game. And this is one of my favorite examples also for where you can see how effective it can be to work with community. We told our players that if we were not able to sell a total of 50,000 copies, there would be no more free updates for the game because we would have to move on to the next project. And we gave them a little list of stuff that they could do in order to support the release of the game, the 1.0 release of the game. Like writing a review, contacting their favorite YouTubers and streamers, buying the game, gifting the game to a friend, and so on. And you could really, really clearly see the impact the community had also on the sales. So you can see the early access release where we mostly did everything ourselves, and then the full release where the community helped us to push the game. We then ported it to a couple of to Xbox, Switch, and PlayStation. And in the end, the game sold around 300,000 copies over its lifetime. We also made an educational version of it. So if you know any teachers that really like biology, please tell them they can have the game for free to use in class. Okay, so that was the first game that we did. And we already took quite a few learnings, but it's not like after this we felt we had a real process. So we just went on and started working on our second game, which is Nimbatus, a space drone constructor, where you build drones out of separate parts, and then you send them on all kinds of different missions in space. And this is actually Micha's hobby project. So when we met, we both had a game, me, the genetics game, right, from university, and him, Nimbatus, that he had been working on in his free time. So when we started the studio, we made the deal that we would finish both these games before we move on to the next thing that happens. So yeah. When we started to work on the game together, we did quite a lot of different social posts. Back in the day, Imager was pretty popular for gaming posts. Nowadays, not so much, but we saw that like GIFs worked very well there. And we decided, okay, maybe we can run another Kickstarter campaign and see where it gets us. This time, the big difference was that we didn't like prepare anything like much in terms of community. So we had to essentially build up the community during the Kickstarter, which was a whole new problem because with the previous game, I had like a whole year of time to find all these people, right, before launching the Kickstarter. So this time we did things differently and we focused everything on a downloadable demo of the game. And then we basically just had this demo, posted about it everywhere, on Reddit, on 9gag, on Imager, had influencers play it, Twitter, and so on. And we never said, hey, support us on Kickstarter, but we only said like, hey, download the demo. And if you wanted to do that, you needed to go through MailChimp, where you had to sign up for the newsletter, and then you would automatically be sent the download link for the demo. And then inside the demo, there was a big pop-up about the Kickstarter. And now you were also on the newsletter, so we could contact you like, hey, we reached a new stretch goal, maybe support the game, and so on. So that was kind of the funnel that was going on there. Then as soon as we had built up a bit of a following and a bit of a community during the Kickstarter, we also added some community goals where people could do different things and share. And if they reached all of them, everybody would get a second copy of the game, which was very motivating for people. For some reason, the Kickstarter ended up raising pretty much exactly the same amount, even though it was a very different campaign. And so we went on to release the game on Steam Early Access in 2018. And then the full release in 2020. And unfortunately, we couldn't port it because the control scheme isn't really fit for controllers, but the game still ended up selling 200,000 copies on PC. So after that, we kind of sat down and thought, we have done two quite similar approaches for these games, and both of them were profitable. So maybe this is like an approach we can continue using. And essentially it works like that. We have an idea that we want to work on, that the whole team thinks this is a good idea. Then we test it on social media. So with Niche, it was mostly like with the Facebook group, and with Nimbatus, it was these different GIFs that we posted to see if there's even interest for it before we put too much time into the game. Then we do crowdfunding to make sure the game is not just a funny internet meme, but it's actually something that people would like to get, to pay for also. And then, that money is used to make an early access version of the game. And this is really like the smallest possible version of the game we can make at this point, right? So for Niche, the playtime was probably only about 1 or 2 hours when the game first came out. Nimbatus a little bit bigger because like player expectations are rising also. But still like make it as small as possible. And then when the game is in early access, it has to finance itself. So it really has to be able to fund its own development. And we just stay in early access as long as the game is still profitable and as long as it's still fun to work on it. At some point, we maybe want to move on, right? And in our case, we then do ports, usually after the full release, just to like expand more. Or you could also do DLC and so on after this. So you can also break this down a little bit more into this circle that I called validate, hype, release. So at the beginning, you have a long validation process where your game needs to keep proving that it will actually be successful. Then you generate hype for it also in this step. And then finally, it is released. And if it's successful, the whole circle starts anew. So I really want to show this 3-step approach in more detail with the Wandering Village, where there was really the first time where we thought about this approach before starting the game and really wanted to go through all of these steps and cautiously evaluate all of them before committing to making this game. So the Wandering Village, maybe you've seen it. It's, I'm gonna show you a little short trailer of it. It's essentially a city builder. We have this pretty cool mix of 2D and 3D graphics going on with hand animated little workers and so on. And yeah, you build a city, but the whole thing and like the big twist about the game is that you do all of that on the back of a giant wandering creature that is called onbu, which means piggyback ride in Japanese. And you traverse all of these different biomes that each have their own dangers and their own resources and so on. So you constantly need to adapt. The game is very much inspired by Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which is like a pre-Studio Ghibli movie where like toxic plants are spreading all around on the ground. So that is very similar in our world setting. And you are now responsible in order to keep the animal healthy, because the animal is like your last refuge where your people ran off to when they couldn't live on the ground anymore. So now you need to protect it at all cost. And all of this essentially makes it a game about symbiosis. So here we started with social tests super early. So when we only had a couple of doodles and ideas about the game, we already started sharing it, like, hey, I made some doodles, or hey, so we have this idea for this game, what should we name it? And at this stage already we saw very good engagement compared to like what we usually achieve on social media. So we were like, okay, so we decided to make like a more elaborated mock-up of the game in like a 3D setting and participate in Pitch Your Game, which is like a Twitter hashtag event that happens every couple months. And yeah, even with this, just a screenshot of this super early mock-up, it was my biggest tweet at the time with over 6,000 likes. So for us, that was enough to say, okay, this seems to be something that people are interested in. Just like the pitch and kind of the aesthetic seem to work well together, so let's do it. So we decided to make another crowdfunding campaign. This time it was a bit more successful than the previous ones, even though we did not have a playable demo, which previously was like our most important asset when we did a crowdfunding campaign because of the YouTubers and streamers and so on, right? If you're interested in all of the Kickstarter stuff, there is like, if you go to strayfawnstudio.com/insights, there is detailed articles about all 3 campaigns, like how big our following was, what exactly we did to promote it, and so on. This time we had ads for the first time. So the 2 previous ones, they were completely zero budget marketing. But this time we had a little bit of money on the side from the 2 previous games. So since we didn't have a demo, we thought it might be a good idea to run some ads with some specialized agencies. So in total, we spent about $20,000 on Facebook ads with these agencies, which worked out very well. It brought in about $40,000 for the campaign. So it was a very positive return of investment. And at the same time as the Kickstarter, we also launched our Steam page and like launched the first trailer of the game. So this was basically the official game reveal where we told everybody, so, okay, yeah, we're actually making this game and this is what it looks like. So now that we had validated, it was now time to hype the game, which is a whole challenge on itself, right? So for many indie developers, Steam wishlists are like the holy grail. That is the metric that you're working towards. That is the number that allows you to kind of estimate how many copies you will sell over the next few years. So I want to give you a little bit of a breakdown of where we got our wishlist from, where people heard about our game the most. And yeah, so this is the whole graph from the first announcement until the launch. In the end, we had 500,000 wishlists when the game went live. And I'm just going to show you some examples on where they came from. So more towards the beginning of the game, we had a lot of success on socials, especially on Reddit, 9gag, and also partially on Imgur, where we had some pretty big posts that went viral in big subreddits. This was immensely helpful, especially since some of them were during the Kickstarter campaign. So that really helped to leverage us there. Reddit marketing is a very complex thing. You really need to be a Reddit user in order to post in the bigger subreddits. You really have to be a part of their community, actively posting there, interacting with people, maybe double checking with moderators if they're okay with you posting. There's also a lot of smaller subreddits where people don't care that much, where you can like promote more. But if you want to post in the bigger ones, you really have to actively have a Reddit account that is alive. But I think it's worth it, putting the time into it. Then more towards the middle, one of the by far most important things that we did is digital events. So all of this was during COVID and all the events were only happening digitally. So while that is a shame, it was also a little bit of a benefit because you could suddenly attend Tokyo Game Show and be in their Steam featuring without actually having to fly to Tokyo, which is a bit of a benefit for indie developers because it costs a lot to go to Tokyo Game Show if you're in America or Europe. So we just sniffed out all of these events that are happening, asked and applied everywhere. And we were very lucky that we got into many of these. With the 2 previous games, it was so much harder. So I guess this game just made my job very easy by having a cool aesthetic art style with a good pitch. So that just opened a lot of doors for us to participate in. I also organized some Steam sales myself. For example, the Swiss game sale that I organized with another Swiss studio, where we invited all developers from Switzerland to participate. And it was also featured on the Steam front page. For some of the developers, this was their biggest day ever for sales, bigger than their launch day. So this can really be very much worth your time, depending on how much visibility these things are getting on either on Steam or if they have like a live stream part. It really depends on how many people are watching. Which brings me to this topic. So for example, Day of the Devs or something like Wholesome Games, they usually require you to make exclusive material like a new trailer, show off a new feature, make a new gameplay trailer, and so on. And since this can take a lot of time, we lost quite a bit of time making trailers. Like this maybe ate away at our development time for 2 or 3 months or something. So you really have to think whether or not it's worth participating in an event. In total, I think we spent about 10K on event costs. This includes a physical booth that we had at Gamescom, which makes up for about half of this money. And the rest is mostly like entry fees that are sometimes a few $100s. But a lot of them were also free. So you can do a lot of zero budget marketing with digital events as well. We also put quite a bit of energy into our TikTok account, which now has a bit above 60K followers. And this was our most, aside from Reddit and 9gag, this was our most important social media account where we had quite a few viral posts. And you could actually see some of them in the spikes of the wishlist. So if you go back in the talk, you can see, oh, there's a viral TikTok, there's a viral TikTok. There's a viral TikTok compared to other socials where we never had as much success. We recently had quite a bit of success on Insta. We're close to on Instagram. We now have almost 20,000 followers there. And that's mostly just by reusing posts that we made on TikTok and posting them on Instagram Reels also. So that has caught up quite a bit as well. Then we had press coverage during the whole development when we showed new trailers and so on, which was really awesome. We also sometimes proactively approached press, sending out press releases when we revealed new features and so on. And we also actively approached YouTubers, which made videos. So at the time, the game was not playable, right? So we couldn't get people any demos or anything. But we told them that, oh, our game is coming up. You are making these videos where you're showing the best upcoming city builders and so on. So we made sure that all the people that make these kind of compilation videos have our trailer and can maybe include us. We also made a Discord, which has now almost 20,000 members, where depending on that had custom links, and depending on which link you joined from, it automatically gives you a role. So we can ping all the tweeters, for example, so all the people that came in through Twitter, if we have a tweet that we would like for them to share. We also had a daily deal from Nimbatus for our previous game, which allowed us to also feature The Wandering Village. That was quite a bit of a spike. We did some cross promotions with other developers. And then here, the by far biggest spike was Steam Next Fest, we combined the Steam Next Fest with our first ever influencer push. So just a few days before Steam Next Fest, YouTubers and streamers were allowed to play the demo and release videos of the demo for the first time, which really helped us to also be featured highly during the Steam Next Fest. And just this push alone, Steam Next Fest and first influencer push, gave us about 100,000 wishlists. So now that we hyped the game, here you can see the graph again, it was time to release. And actually we were supposed to release a whole year earlier. And the reason why we didn't was that firstly, we spent so much time working on trailers that we lost quite a bit of time. We felt that the game had too much hype. So we wanted once again to make just a tiny early access release, only in English, and go from there. But we already had also a lot of Chinese wish lists and players that really wanted to have the game localized. And we felt like the playtime was too short. So we really had to put more content in, localize it. And we had shown quite a lot of the content that we had in the demo for Steam Next Fest. And we got a lot of feedback. So we decided to take another year and really put everything that we have into this game. And then we finally launched it on September 14th, 2022. After 1.5 years of production and about $1.5 million development budget. Right, so that happened. We sent out over 10,000 emails to press, streamers and YouTubers shortly and during launch week. So it was a huge push that we did there. We spent hours and hours just replying to emails. We did a small campaign with Daredrop. You can check them out. It's very cool. They make dares for YouTubers. And we also added a little bit of Twitch integration to the game, which was super cool. Twitch went very well. We had like 30K concurrent viewers. That was the peak. Got quite a bit of press coverage again, which was awesome. Here's just like a super quick email that you can see how we usually contact people. So maybe take a screenshot if you need an example in the future on how to approach YouTubers and streamers. All in all, for the launch, we spent 16,000 again on ads and 3,000 on the Daredrop campaign that helped us to bring in some additional influencers. And all in all, the overall marketing budget for the game was about 50,000. So most of it during the Kickstarter for ads, then some more ads during the launch and some event costs and the Daredrop campaign. If you compare this to what the game costs in development, it's actually a very low marketing budget. Yeah, it went very well. The game was everywhere on Steam, and we were lucky that Tacticon happened shortly after, so we could make our launch discount longer. And yeah, the game ended up selling over 100,000 copies during launch week. Screenshots are already a little bit outdated. It's now at around almost 250,000 units. And I thought it might also be interesting to take a look at where our players are based. It's mostly United States, Germany, and China. And yeah, now we are working on the... So we just actually finished porting the game to Xbox. It's coming out very soon this summer. We just announced it. It will be 20th of July, together with our first huge content update. We had a little bit of a problem that since we already knew it was going to release on Xbox soon, and it's coming also to Game Pass, which was just announced, we kind of had to focus on the controller support and on the Xbox part. So we were a little bit slow on content updates. So now we're super happy that the game is finally coming out on Xbox with a big content update. And from now on, we can really just focus on making new content for the game, which we're going to do for quite some more time. I don't know how long, but as long as we keep working on it and it's fun, and as I said, and it keeps financing itself, yeah, we'll be going for quite a bit. And yeah, I'm very happy with how this game is going, and it looks like we will be able to make another one and start the circle again from the beginning after we finish this one. I hope this was interesting for you. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to write me an email. I'm happy to chat with you. Thank you very much and have a nice time.